Welcome to our channel, Hashmi Clinics.
All right, welcome everyone. Let's get right into our deep dive on Antimonium Crudum. You know those cases, right? The ones where the stomach and the emotions are just completely in sync, both screaming overload and irritability. Well, if you've seen that, you've probably brushed up against this remedy. Today, we're going to build a really solid, clinically useful picture of this fantastic polycrest. We'll cover everything from its absolute core essence all the way to those little prescribing pearls that make all the difference.
You know, this classic quote, it just nails it. It gets right to the heart of Antimonium Crudum. See, it's not just about a patient being in a bad mood and having a coated tongue. It's a single unified state. We always say the mental state is king, right? Well, with this remedy, the stomach is absolutely the queen and they rule the patient's whole kingdom together. If you can grasp that inseparable link, you're going to prescribe this remedy with so much more confidence. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the essence and the mental picture. Then we'll move into the generals and what causes the state to appear. After that, we'll hit the key physicals, its clinical uses, and of course the modalities and comparisons. We'll wrap it all up with some real prescribing pearls. Sound good? Let's dive in. Right. Let's start with the absolute core of this remedy, the mental picture. And with Antimonium Crudum, this disturbance shows up so powerfully in both the mind and the stomach, they're completely inseparable. It gives us this really memorable picture of what we call the sentimental glutton.
So what's the big idea? What's the essence? Think of it like this. For an Antimonium Crudum patient, their digestive tract is a perfect mirror of their emotional state. Seriously. Every single burp, every weird craving, the character of the stool, it's all telling you a story about what's going on inside their head and heart. So when you see a case where the gut and the emotions are just this tangled up, you have to be thinking Antimonium Crudum.
And this is where it gets really interesting. You've got this central contradiction, this duality that is so key to spotting the remedy. On one hand, you have this incredibly sentimental, romantic soul, ecstatic love, dreamy, totally affected by moonlight, suffering from a broken heart. And then on the other hand, they can be this sulky, irritable, peevish person who literally cannot stand to be spoken to or even looked at. It's this Jekyll and Hyde thing in their emotional world that is just so characteristic.
Child cannot bear to be touched or looked at. I mean, this is one of those keynotes that is just gold in the clinic. It's one of the most reliable signs you'll ever find, especially when you're dealing with acutes and kids. You've got a child with a gastric fever, or maybe even pneumonia, and they have this extreme peevishness. They cry, they scream if you even try to touch them or look at them. That is a massive pointer to this remedy.
Okay, so we've got this picture of a sentimental but really irritable patient. The question is, what triggers this? What pushes them into this state? Let's take a look at the generals and the causative factors that really bring this remedy picture into focus.
The physical generals here are, well, they're full of their own little contradictions. First, there's often this tendency to grow fat, and you see it a lot at the extremes of life, in children and in the elderly. Now check out this temperature thing. They're sensitive to cold, but, and this is key, they're aggravated by heat, especially radiant heat from the sun or a fire. And you absolutely have to remember their strong aversion to cold bathing. It's a huge keynote. They also get really drowsy and sleepy, especially older folks. And one last peculiar thing, a strange absence of pain where you would absolutely expect it. It's one of those weird symptoms that's worth tucking away.
I love this slide because it shows you the perfect storm that creates an Antimonium Crudum state. It's like a chain reaction. First, there's some kind of emotional upset. Disappointed love is a classic. Then, what do? They try to make themselves feel better with food, right? Overeating, sour wine, rich pastry. And then, the final straw, an environmental trigger. They get overheated in the sun or go for a cold swim, and boom, the whole system just collapses. It's this combination of emotional, dietary, and environmental triggers that is so typical.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to look at the key physical symptoms, system by system. These are the things you'll see in the clinic that will really confirm your choice and complete the patient's picture. Okay, first things first, we have to talk about what the old masters called the red strand of the remedy, and that is the tongue. We're not talking about a slightly white coating here. No. This is a thick, milky white coating, like someone literally took a paintbrush and whitewashed their tongue. It's that dramatic. If you see this tongue, you absolutely have to have Antimonium Crudum in your differential.
So, as you'd expect, the entire digestive system is just in a state of revolt. The stomach feels constantly overloaded, like there's a rock in it, even when they haven't eaten. They have no appetite. In fact, food is disgusting to them. You get these constant belches that taste of whatever they ate hours or even a day ago. And then you have the cravings for things like acids and pickles. The bowels, they're all over the place. Diarrhea alternating with constipation, which you see a lot in the elderly. And the stools themselves are often watery, but somehow contain hard lumps. It's just a complete mess. The skin really gives you a window into the internal state. The big theme here is a tendency towards abnormal, horny growths. You see warts, especially on the hands and soles. You see thick, hard, honey-colored scabs on any eruptions. You get those classic cracks in the corners of the mouth and the nostrils. And don't forget the nails. They get brittle, they grow out of shape, sometimes they even grow in splits. And a huge one, those large, horny, and incredibly tender callosities on the soles of the feet.
So we've got a really solid picture of the remedy now. So the big question is, where do we actually apply this in the clinic? When is it indicated? Let's look at some key applications in both acute and chronic states.
For acute conditions, you really need to be on the lookout for those peculiar modalities, things like gastric fevers for sure. But think about this, a whooping cough that gets worse when they're overheated in a warm room. Or how about cholera infantum, where the child vomits sour curds and then flat out refuses to nurse. You also see it in ailments from sun exposure, or for suppressed menses after cold bathing. And here's another classic, losing your voice just from getting overheated. These are the kinds of specific, weird triggers that should make you think of this remedy immediately.
Chronically, this is a remedy for some really deep-seated conditions. Think about gout, but specifically gout with gastric symptoms. The old masters called this gouty metastasis, where the joint inflammation subsides and suddenly the stomach flares up. You see it in chronic dyspepsia, from just constantly making bad food choices. It's also great for rheumatoid arthritis, especially in the finger joints, and a big one, eczema that exists alongside all those gastric issues we talked about. It's a fantastic remedy for those conditions.
Okay, let's talk modalities. This is absolutely crucial, you guys. For any remedy, but especially this one, the modalities are what give it that sharp edge and help you differentiate it. So let's really clarify the unique pattern for Antimonium Crudum.
And here's where you really see the remedy's unique personality. Let's look at the aggravations first. Heat, especially from the sun or a fire, makes things worse. Cold bathing, terrible for them. Overeating, pretty much anything rich or sour, pork, pastry, acids, is a huge trigger. They're often worse in the evening, and worse from touch or being looked at. Even moonlight can aggravate their mental symptoms. Now for the better side. Open air helps, rest helps, and here's the fascinating one. They are better from a warm bath, even though they're worse from radiant heat. See that specificity? That's what we're looking for.
So how do you tell this apart from some of the other big polycrests it gets confused with? Well, look at pulsatilla. Pulsatilla is weepy and wants consolation, right? Antimonium crudum is sulky and wants to be left alone. Big difference. What about bryonia? Both are irritable for sure, but bryonia's irritability comes from being disturbed. They want to be still because any motion aggravates them physically. Antimonium crudum's irritability is just they don't want you there. And then there's sulfur. Sulfur is worse from warmth and bathing in general and has that classic 11 a.m. hunger and burning feet. The pictures are really quite distinct when you line them up like this.
Okay, let's wrap this up by distilling everything we've talked about into a few key takeaways. These are the clinical pearls, the things you really want to remember to help you spot this remedy in your practice.
If there is one single thing you take away from this today, let it be this: the thick, milky white coated tongue. Honestly, if you see this tongue, I don't care what the chief complaint is, it could be a cough, a skin problem, gout, you have to consider Antimonium crudum. It is the remedy's calling card. You simply cannot ignore it.
And here are a few more of those golden nuggets, those peculiar keynotes that can just unlock a case for you. That sentimental mood in the moonlight, losing their voice just from getting overheated. That classic, the child who cannot bear to be touched or even looked at. Those incredibly tender, horny callosities on the soles of the feet, bad effects from disappointed love, a never-been-well-since etiology. And of course, that powerful aversion to cold bathing. These are the symptoms that confirm your prescription.
So, in the end, it comes down to this question. Are you looking at a sentimental soul, or are you looking at an overloaded stomach? And with Antimonium crudum, the answer is always, always both. You can't separate them. The emotional heart and the digestive center are speaking the exact same language. When you see that profound and separable link in a patient, that's when you know you're in Antimonium crudum territory.
Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi is a distinguished homeopathic physician, educator, and researcher with over 4 decades of clinical and teaching experience. He is widely respected for his deep command of materia medica, repertory, and constitutional prescribing, combined with a practical, patient-centered approach. Dr. Hashmi has dedicated his career to training generations of homeopathic doctors, blending classical principles with modern clinical insight. He is also known for his innovative work in digital homeopathy, developing educational content, clinical tools, and AI-assisted systems to enhance remedy selection and case analysis. With a strong commitment to ethical practice and lifelong learning, Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi continues to guide, inspire, and elevate the standards of homeopathic education and patient care.